Live from the Talking Joe Studios, it's Talking Joe.
Talking Joe is on the air.
Hey, it's not him, Mark, it's me, Tim, with a special episode of Talking Joe, recorded 15 November 2025 in Des Moines, Iowa, at Assembly Required, a great annual G.I. Joe convention. This was AR's 14th year. I moderated the silent interview panel with convention guests Ron Wagner and Phil Hester. And if you missed it, we've turned it into a bonus episode of Talking Joe. Let's join our audio from the panel room at the EMC Expo Center in Des Moines, already in progress. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Assembly Required 2025's first panel of the convention, Silent Interviews. Thank you so much to Brian Sauer and Travis Weber for having us. I'm Tim Finn, co-host of Talking Joe, the dedicated comics G.I. Joe podcast. New episodes every Thursday. I also keep a blog at A Real American Book, because I'm writing a history book, and I own a comic book store right outside of Boston, Hub Comics. Larry Hama could not be here and sends his regrets, travel complications. But we can certainly make the most of our time with our other two guests, Phil Hester, writer and artist.
Oh, wow.
And Ron Wagner, just artist.
Oh, wow. It's already started.
All right, so Ron drew a wordless G.I. Joe story for G.I. Joe Yearbook 3 during the Marvel era, and then a short Snake Eyes story during the Devil's Due era.
Oh, I forgot about that.
Which you don't have to remember. It was only available in the reprints in the collection of the Snake Eyes Declassified miniseries. It was not available as or with a regular comic book issue. And I sometimes forget it exists too. And Phil Hester wrote and penciled G.I. Joe Silent Missions Beachhead, issue number 1.
Thank you. You get an applause. I don't know what happened here. Good shit.
Which was released this past April as a part of the 5-week Silent Missions event from Skybound. I guess my first question for both of you is, why don't we start with something light?
Good. It's early in the morning.
It's 10:30.
So, yeah.
And also we're going to start with Phil, because I think Ron really needs some time to...
Wow.
It never ends, does it? This is just
It's like two body blows
right off top, man.
Actually, I thought I would do a callback to last year's panel. Phil, have you lettered comics?
Very, very early in my career, but not since.
Okay.
So yeah, no, once it became an issue of whether or not you would be paid for that skill, they stopped wanting me to letter comic books.
Do you? And this does relate because silent issues, right?
Mm-hmm.
What do you think having lettered some comics gets you now than when you were also drawing comics?
Well, you do have to think about balloon placement, which is an important skill except on silent comic books. But I've so trained myself to think about balloon placement when I'm composing a page that when I did do the silent issue, Ron can tell you, we cartoonists have it built into our brains that we leave a little headroom above every character for balloons. And in the silent issues, you don't need that. So you could, fall into a trap where you have a lot of empty, useless space in the top of your compositions because it's your instinct to leave balloon space. And I did have to overcome that when I laid out Beachhead. I had to think about, no, that's space I can use. And the cool thing about silent storytelling is you have to give all your subtext visually. So in my story, I had to tell the audience that these kids were orphans. And I did that by making sure there were pictures of the family visible in their little hovel apartment. And I did that by putting in the space that I would normally have balloons. So I don't know if that's a question you were asking me, but
that's a great answer to my third or fourth question.
Right. But that,
awesome.
So yeah, when thinking about lettering is an integral part of laying out any page, even if you're not the letterer.
Ron, morning.
Morning.
Thinking back to that wordless story in G.I. Joe Yearbook 3.
Yes.
Do you remember approaching that project differently? Because you were also drawing regular issues of G.I. Joe around then.
Was I?
Does that predate?
It's all a blur.
Well, that's the problem. I did this like 110 years ago.
I
remember that when I did the silent issue, it kind of screwed, because Phil was talking about how we're like programmed to think about word balloons and space for that. And typically, when you do a word balloon, it helps you. It makes your composition in your panel more interesting, because instead of this like face being in the middle of it, which you can do in a silent issue, now you have to kind of move it down here and give it a little, so suddenly it kind of is a little more interesting layout. So, but when I did the silent issue, it kind of corrupted me for a while in the fact that I did not think about word balloon placement, because I'm just like, everything's a silent issue now, and of course that now they're going to cut your heads off with word balloons, so that's not a good thing. So was that?
Yeah.
Did I answer that?
Yeah, this is a relaxed panel.
Okay.
There are no wrong
There's
answers.
microphones. It's not that relaxed.
Yeah, there's microphones.
We're just recording this
Yeah.
with two audio devices and one camera.
And I don't remember so much about drawing the issue, just because it was so long ago. I just remember coming up and having to like be tutored by Larry on like, this is how we're going to do a silent issue, that kind of stuff. So
there was a conversation.
There was, oh sure, yeah,
Okay.
yeah, and he just
Was that your Larry?
yeah. So it's my Larry. So yeah.
All right, and when you were drawing G.I. Joe, Ron, Marvel was in Manhattan and you were in New Jersey.
Yes.
So you could go to the office every couple of days.
That's a lot. Like once a week, once every couple of weeks, something like that.
Okay.
So,
All right.
unless I was beckoned by Larry for some
Yeah.
reason.
If you were there twice in 1 week, you're in trouble.
You're in trouble. Yeah.
All right. So and Ron, Larry was the writer, and
Yes.
the series had an editor and an assistant editor,
Yes.
and you were interacting with the editor.
Yeah. I guess I always thought Larry was the editor, but he wasn't. He was, I think, Bobby Chase or Bob Harris or somebody was the editor.
Yes.
All of that. So
Yes.
I just dealt mostly with Larry, and Larry was an editor there
Yes.
at Marvel, so he had an office.
Yes. So Marvel had a policy at the time that staff editors were expected to freelance write scripts for other editors at Marvel. So Larry's day job was editing Conan, and Larry's freelance gig was writing G.I. Joe. And we're all thinking in this room that Larry's the G.I. Joe guy, but that was actually his one of his side gigs at the time. All right. So then, in terms of location. Phil, when you have been drawing comics, was there ever a time that you were near the office for
No.
for Image,
Well-
for Marvel, for DC, or have you always been far?
This
far?
is a good like demographic point here. Ron's like 4 or 5 years older than I am,
At least.
and I think he's 5 years. I think you're exactly 5 years older than I am. And Ron's generation is probably the last that had to be in New York, and I'm the first that did not.
Right.
Because FedEx came to the fore, and faxing became a thing, and then soon after that, the internet. And so people can live anywhere, all over the world and do comics.
Yeah.
But at the beginning of my career, you still sort of had to schlep out there to find work, but you didn't have to live out there.
And now you live far away, Phil, from the publishers, and it's all email.
Yeah, far away from the publishers, very close to here, 90 minutes from here.
Okay, and here being Iowa.
Yeah.
Des Moines, Iowa. Okay. Ron, when you have gotten scripts from different writers, right? There are these two wordless stories that are sort of thematically at the center of this panel. But you've worked with a lot of writers,
Yep.
and presumably you've worked from plots and from scripts. Have there been times where you've been co-plotter?
You sort of are.
I sort of am. I
Yeah,
guess.
every time you draw something, you're sort of.
Yeah.
All right, so Phil
Yeah.
just said you sort of are. Every time you draw
Yeah.
something, you sort of are. So
Yes.
can you run with that?
Well, and certainly with the plot, you have a little more leeway, on like what you want to do and how you want to break it down. And plot, basically, say like a Larry Hama plot, right? Like page 6, there's 6 paragraphs on this page. So that would be roughly 6 panels, right? So, and then a script, full script, it would say, panel 1, long shot, Gotham City, dark, blah, 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 and then here's the copy. And that's the thing about a script that I like, is I know exactly how much copy is going to go on this. And a plot, you don't. You just kind of have a rough,
You don't know what people are saying.
You don't really know it, even though, for most plots, you get a gist of it, right? And you're like, oh, I know this panel, somebody's going to have to talk, so I'm going to have to leave some room up here. But if you have a full script, I know exactly what these people are saying, and I can gauge that. So, and I've had, we were talking about lettering. I've done lettering, not for a really long time, but we had it at the Kubert School. We had a lettering class, which everybody just loved, and but it gives you a sense of this much dialogue. It's going to be about that big, so you kind of have an idea of what it's going to be. But with a plot, say this panel 1, I could break this panel into 3 little panels to give me a little storytelling moment. So in that sense, yeah, you're kind of co-plotting, right? So if you have and a full script, things are a little tighter in that way, So it's not quite as easy to kind of I'm gonna. Not that doesn't happen. So, but it's just plot. You have a little more wiggle room, I think. So.
Do either of you have a story where a writer or an editor asked you to redraw a page because you had missed something that was important in the storytelling?
Absolutely not.
No.
Absolutely not.
I would say no. The only time I've ever been asked to redraw something was for a technical error or a continuity issue.
Yeah.
Okay.
So when I was drawing Green Arrow, Dead Man was co-starring in it, and I really love the Kelly Jones version of Dead Man, which looks like a corpse, and I really like the Neil Adams version, which looks like kind of a superhero with a desiccated face. And I was drawing one that was sort of right in between, and DC was like, no, he's got to look like a superhero again. He can't look like a skeleton anymore. So I had to redraw Dead Man on 5 pages. But so that's the kind of things I've had to redraw. Not
a whole page.
we're good storytellers, so usually we don't have to deal with that sort of thing.
No.
Yeah. I will say that's the only thing I'll ever brag about with my work is I'm a good storyteller. I'm not a great artist. I'm not a good draftsman.
Sir.
But I think my storytelling is in the higher percentile for comics, and so is Ron's.
Thank you.
And he can draw.
Okay, Ron, did you want to add to that answer?
I don't think so. No,
Okay.
because it's really been the same thing for me. I've never had this whole page has to. It's always just you didn't draw this right or something. It's
The
always just
Batmobile's changed.
Yeah, it's always some little continuity thingy or something. So it's never been you just suck. You have to redraw this whole story. So, thankfully.
Right, so I'm thinking of these different elements of comics. There's story, which is plot or script, and what happens. There's art, which is the images on the page. There's character, which is what we care about, and is something you don't see. It's something you're experiencing in the center of your brain as you take in the story. And then there's storytelling, which is what you are doing on the page. Mm-hmm. And when I was younger and reading comics, I didn't think of these as different but overlapping things. And I don't know if there's a question here more specific than, can you just talk about this? Oh, here's the question. So you get a plot or a script, which is the story, and you're going to draw, which is the storytelling, right? Is there someone in your past, in comics or in school, or maybe outside, like a friend or some kind of a critic, where you learned a lesson in improving your storytelling?
Good question. Probably Larry, I guess,
Larry Hama.
Yeah, Larry Hama.
Okay. Because you went to his office at least.
That's cold.
I know. Because you went to his office.
Yeah.
And what happened in his office?
I can't talk about that.
There's
I'm
a restraining order.
I'm still traumatized by it. So, no, he just kind of like, when I first called Larry Hama to get an interview from him, and I think I'd done some work for like First Comics and some other things, and of course Larry's reputation already preceded him, and
what was that reputation?
Well, just he was kind of a gruff a little bit,
Curmudgeon.
curmudgeonly. That was the word, yes,
Okay.
And did not suffer fools lightly, and I am nothing if not a fool. So there's that. And but I called him up, and I'm like, "Hi, Mr. Hama, I'm showing you my portfolio," and he's like, I want to see 22 pages of continuity, or I don't want to talk to you. I got it. And the reason he says that is because most people getting into the industry, they're not doing continuity storytelling pages. They're doing pinups of Conan or Spider-Man or the Hulk or whatever. So it's just a one drawing pinup of this thing. Well, if you're drawing a comic book, you have to be able to tell a story. And that drawing of Conan, although maybe really cool, look at all the muscles, and all that kind of stuff, that doesn't tell him that he's going to be able to give you a plot, and in 3 or 4 weeks you're going to turn around a 22-page story, and it's going to be legible. So as an editor, he wants to know if he's going to waste any, he's not going to waste any time with you if you can't do this, right? So he's just, it's just the way he kind of delivered the line, and it's just like, so you better just have your shit together, and I still went in, and it was still you draw like one set of eyes and 2 sets of noses, and this isn't real, and that's blah 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 blah, and you drew this jacket, but you didn't draw the body underneath the jacket, and you didn't, all of these kind of, so it was like this all, and he was right on all of that, but he also said, if you do 5 pages of really good superhero stuff, I'll take it to every editor up here and show them. So it wasn't just like, I'm just going to beat you to death and kick you out the door, So it was, and then he said, in like a year, you could be really good. And yay. And basically I ignored pretty much everything he said, as far as like doing the 5 pages of superheroes, because I think I went over to the DC or somewhere and I got work. And then like kind of a year later, I went up to see him, and like, here's my mountain of stuff. And he looked at like 2 or 3 pages, and then he started finding work for me. So it was, he just wants to know that you can tell a story, and do continuity and do comic book pages, right? Because it's one thing to do the drawing, but if you're not telling the story, and I always think of these things as little movies. Like, you're the kind of the director of this little movie, but you're also the costume designer and the set designer and the lighter and the editor and all of these things, but it's just this little movie, and that's kind of the actors, the whole thing, how they're acting and all of this kind of, or overreacting in my case, and so you're kind of controlling this whole thing, and I think that's the kind of appeal of drawing comics, is that you it's slightly godlike in a weird way, because I'm creating this universe, and all this kind of stuff, and as opposed to like commercial art, as long as you get this comic book done and it's, on a timely manner, and no one's really giving you any crap about it, whereas if you go do commercial art, there's always people that are going to say, oh, can you move this from here to here, and can you make this more blue, and can you do, so there's always, it's like art by committee. But comics isn't typically that. You kind of get to cowboy this thing out, on your own, ride the planes and herd the doggies and all of that kind of stuff. So that was really long-winded.
No, it's good.
So,
Thank you.
It was good.
yeah.
Phil, same question. Is there someone in your past
Oh, yeah.
from whom you got a lesson in storytelling?
Yeah, I would say, going back to your other question even before that, and when Ron was speaking, it was reminding me all this. If you're a cartoonist, if you're a comic book artist, you're not separating any of those tasks in your mind, like character, storytelling. You're revealing character through storytelling. It's all one integrated thing in your mind. And that's, I think, what makes us cartoonists. And it's sort of separate. Like, I think every cartoonist grows up, loving Frank Frazetta or whatever, and loving Jack Kirby. And then you hit a point where you have to decide if you're a Frazetta or a Jack Kirby.
Help us out here.
So Frazetta does all these magnificent paintings of barbarians and, scantily clad women and fantasy things. And Jack Kirby created universes. And
Frazetta was doing cover paintings for
yes.
books.
Yeah.
And Kirby's drawing sequential pages.
He's drawing comic books. Yeah. And when I was about 12 or 13, I saw Frank Miller's Daredevil. And for me, that was just like a little switch went off. And I was like, I always knew I wanted to draw comic books. And then I saw Daredevil and I was like, I want to draw that kind of comic book. And so I went from being somebody that wanted to do pinups and cool things to somebody that wanted to tell stories with pictures. And I was lucky that way back, before time began, when I started going to comic book conventions, they used to have a room like this and a couple of tables like this, and they would sit editors at those tables. And you could walk through that gauntlet with your portfolio and get chewed to pieces. And you could stay in that room all day in Chicago. And I did. That was my mission every con I went to, and I took notes. And even when the notes were inane, if you heard something 2 or 3 times, it was probably right. And so I would just stay in that gauntlet until I was a bloody mess, and then walk out and try to integrate all those things. But I will say, it's hard to quantify what Ron and I are both talking about, because it's something we feel like it's. I'm not a huge believer in talent. I believe in hard work a lot, but we have to have a kernel of talent to want to do this. And part of our talent, beyond hand-eye coordination, is thinking visually. So we already, when they talk about people having internal monologues, like thoughts.
You never stop.
Yeah. A good portion of mine are just images. You know, and that's because that's how I see the world. That's how I process information, is through images. So storytelling with pictures is very natural to both of us, I think.
Yeah.
You've referred to sort of movies or cameras, and I think about, to use movie terms, long shots, medium shots, and close-ups, right? Close-ups are generally technically head and shoulders. Medium shot is waist up. Long shot is where you can see a full body. Extreme long shot is farther away, and then you've got camera up and camera down, and so much of the to use a director term from film for comics, calling the shots on a page, that is the storytelling. That's a big part of it, along with acting and costume and lighting and mood. Can you think of a particular project you've worked on where there was a challenging storytelling challenge, and you pulled it off, or you learned something? Or if you don't remember that, can you just talk some more about storytelling?
We could do that all day. I mean, it's not G.I. Joe related, but for me, the biggest challenge I've ever encountered in comics is I drew Kevin Smith's Green Arrow. And who's here has seen a Kevin Smith movie? His characters they talk a lot. I mean, they do run-ons. And he didn't stop that when he started writing comics. So, we'd get a script and there'd be word balloons. I'm like, half this page is word balloons. Physically, the space is occupied by word balloons. And I had to figure out a way to, and like I said, I'm from the Frank Miller school of really kinetic storytelling. and I had to figure out a way to like break up these word balloons so it wouldn't just like freeze people in their tracks on each balloon. And I had to find a way to make the timing of his jokes work on paper, which is like a big task.
And you're not allowed to ask for additional pages.
No. There's a hard cap on the number of pages per issue, unless you're Kevin Smith, and sometimes you can push them around a little bit. But I'm not. I don't have that kind of pull. So yeah, you've got to make the story fit, and you've got to make the story make sense without like drowning people. And that's totally opposite of my instincts, because my instincts are to like keep things moving. So it made me a more rounded artist to have to like think about the timing of dialogue instead of just how am I moving these figures across the page. Like one of my favorite artists is Jose Luis Garcia Lopez.
Yeah.
And if you look at one of his pages, he is just like, he is pulling you into a page and you're just like descending.
He leads your eye.
Yeah, you're descending through the page, through the figures, more than the panels, because he's just a master. And like that's my instinct, and I sort of had to abandon that for Green Arrow. So but I learned a lot from it.
But before I jump over to Ron, I want to ask a follow-up, because you've mentioned Frank Miller twice, and so much of Miller comes from Will Eisner.
Yeah.
And a little later, I think this might be after Daredevil or during, but Kojima from Japan, Lone Wolf and Cub.
And Kung Fu movies. He and Larry Hama would go out and watch Kung Fu movies from 12 to 4 every night in Manhattan and learn about like staging a scene with bodies, with the movement of bodies. And it's no coincidence that Larry and Frank are two of the best storytellers in comics.
Right.
Ron?
Yeah.
Do you have an example where you feel like you figured something out in storytelling? A challenging moment in plot or script?
I did a project where all the characters, and there were many characters, not G.I. Joe, and it was kind of a big thing, and then and it coincided with some crossovers, intercompany crossovers, and it seemed like in these crossovers that all these characters did lots of fun, cool stuff, and then they got together in the book I was drawing and stood around and talked about it.
Yeah. Remember in that other book?
In ours, we were doing this cool, and now we're just so it was like 4 issues of lots of people standing around talking, and that is challenging. So you have to kind of, how do you make page after page of people standing around talking interesting? So that was a challenge.
How do you make?
You're moving the camera around a lot, man. You're pulling in and out. You're and you're shooting from outside of the building with a word balloon. Like the 22 panels that always work. You basically use those. Larry Hama's 22 panels that always work.
Wally Wood's.
It's Wally Wood's, and then it was Larry's.
Wally Wood had this description of panels that always work, and Larry Hama turned it into a handout.
Yes.
It was his, like a flyer that he would give you.
Yes.
And
have you heard the good news about Wally Wood?
Yeah.
Larry wrote across the top, Wally Wood's 22 panels that always work, and then they're all drawn out in 3 rows, and then under each one he's got sort of the title of it. It's like newspaper headline.
Through a window.
Yeah.
Silhouette,
reverse silhouette.
A talking building or car. Right. All of those kind of things.
Do you remember getting that handout?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I still have it somewhere.
Yeah.
You don't need the object because
it's all here. It's all here. So it's all up there. Yeah. So, so that particular, and then there's stuff that I've drawn that I don't feel that I'm particularly well suited to do. I did some issues of Excalibur it all took place in like a girls' school, and I'm just like, I'm not good at this. So, but you learn from those things. So.
You had mentioned Larry Hama as someone who offered lessons in storytelling.
Uh-huh.
Are there artists who you used to or now look back to for their storytelling chops?
Well, I'm a big Alex Toth fan. Mm-hmm. So he was kind of one of the big guys. And then, of course, I loved like Russ Heath, Sergeant Rock stuff. John Severin and all these kind of stuff. And then when I got out of art school, I happened to move into an apartment right next to Gray Morrow, who was like another kind of comic book guy, and I became his assistant for a while as I was kind of schlepping my stuff into the Marvel and DC. This was in New Jersey, to Marvel and DC every week, trying to get work, and they were like, oh, they're not giving me work. Don't worry, kid. Here's a page to draw. That kind of stuff. So, and from Gray, I learned that I didn't draw necks on people. So because I would draw these things and then he would ink them, and I'd be like, why does yours, besides you're kind of older and you're way talented and I'm just starting out, but why does this look better than what I did? And a lot of people, I found this with some other pros, they're reluctant to kind of like give it to you, Yeah. Larry's not, but they're just the, I call it the con portfolio review. When you go, yeah, it looks great, keep at it. And because if you start going, well, you draw these, this is bad, and you do this a bit bad, you see people kind of glaze over, and because you're not saying what they want to hear sometimes. But I was always kind of like Phil. I'm just like, no, tell me. I want to know. I don't care how gruesome this is for me, but I want to know how to get better. And that was and I had to drag it out of him. He's like, yeah, you just don't draw necks on people. So, and of course I'm looking at my stuff and I'm like, hey, you're right.
Don't you think that was some professional courtesy on his part? Like he saw you as a pro. And
yeah.
You don't want to just tell everybody what they're doing
you're
wrong.
Right. And because he knew I was like serious about this, and I wasn't there just to I don't need you to kind of glad hand me, I want to know, why is this after you ink it? And I did the same thing. Bill Sienkiewicz inked a 4-issue Blaze thing or something under a pseudonym because he was under contract with somebody.
Johnny Blaze.
Johnny
This
Blaze.
was a Ghost Rider miniseries.
And I kind of did the same thing with Bill because I would get I would do my little pencil-y things and then Bill would do Bill all over it, and it totally is Bill. And I love Bill Sienkiewicz's stuff, don't get me wrong, but I'm just like, why? And I had to talk to him, like, how do you make it look have more weight and mass than my little drawings? And he's like, well, he goes, you need to learn to ink with a broom instead of a needle, meaning going to block in big black areas because that's the stuff that gives your stuff weight and mass and what, instead of I'm just going to scritch away here and it's just you're not. So anyway, but I had to pull that out of Bill too because he was just kind of like, yeah, that's fine, everything, So anyway, there's a few things, I guess.
This is not intended to call out any one writer, but some writers have a lot of dialogue or a lot of narration, and some writers have less. Such a specific question. Do you think comics should have less dialogue, or is there a sweet spot? And Phil, maybe your answer is very different because you're a writer, so you were in control there.
I think it depends entirely on the comic book and the story you're trying to tell. So, if you can write like Alan Moore, write all you want, but you can also write a very terse script that has very little dialogue or detail for the artist, and let storytelling carry the day. And it really matters what kind of films you go see. So. Like a rom-com's got to have a lot of witty dialogue, but an action film screenplay's, this thick. So it just depends on the story.
Ron, thoughts?
There's a lot of kind of older comics, but stuff, and even stuff I've done that I forgot about, and I'll see these pages, and I'm like, my God, there's a lot of dialogue in these panels. So and I see a lot of this kind of older stuff, and there's just so much dialogue, and then but it's kind of cool in the sense that I only have to draw in this much of the panel, because it's all dialogue, So and I with Phil, it depends on the story you're doing, right? And that's why action stuff is fun. Because it's typically it's all the storytelling is being done with the movement of the figures and what's going on, and people aren't standing around chatting. And I think in my previous comments you've found out how much I love doing kind of pages with people standing around chatting. So but it's a challenge. That kind of stuff's a challenge. So
at last. Oh, please.
Well, I would say that's why so many of the silent issues are so action oriented because, I mean, we do try to have some storytelling facets to it. At least I did, but like the engine of the story has got to be action driven because we're telling the story through gestures and expressions mostly. And since there are a lot of G.I. Joe characters whose faces you cannot see, gesture becomes very important.
Yeah.
So like how you stage it and what your figures are saying through their movement is very important.
This is a good segue back to G.I. Joe.
So good.
See what I did?
So, but one question before that. So, Ron, you have mentioned at last year's panel, you would want to draw war comics, action comics, maybe horror comics or crime comics, but you're not a superhero guy. Phil,
You can do it.
Are there certain categories that you think you are suited to or you want to do? And are there certain categories that you are cast as or editors find you for?
Yeah, I think I'm best known for drawing Green Arrow, so I tend to get those kind of superhero offers. But I would rather draw. I also drew Swamp Thing for a long time at the beginning of my career, and I'd rather draw monsters. Like if you ask me what my favorite genre is, it's monsters who are the good guys, and I love to draw that sort of thing. That's the stuff that spoke to me as a reader, and it like still gets to my core. But I will say, as a professional, I feel like I'm not a complete professional unless I feel like I can tackle any genre. And Ron's got that ethos too, I think, where like if it's not in our wheelhouse, we're still going to give you 100% and still try to give you a good story. But all those genres you were mentioning with Ron, I would like to see more of all those. I'd like to see more horror comics, more romance comics, more war comics,
Crime,
all of that.
Yeah. That's it.
Okay, so in April of this year, there was a 5-week event where Skybound, through Image Comics, published 5 different new G.I. Joe one-shots. Each was character-focused and written and drawn by a writer-artist. And Phil Hester had the Beachhead issue, which is great. Can you tell us a little about how that came to be and some of the choices you made? Because there are some obvious limitations, right? No dialogue, and comics, if we're all thinking of the Marvel run for G.I. Joe, comics were 22 pages then. Comics are all 20 pages now. And maybe you haven't noticed a difference. I sometimes do.
Not all. I mean, some companies still do 22.
Okay.
But most comics are 22.
Marvel, DC, and G.I. Joe at least.
Yeah.
So how did this Beachhead issue come to be?
Alex Antone, who's the editor of the project, I'd worked with him at DC before as both an artist and a writer, and he had been lining up talent for this, and I was on his short list. But God, I don't know if I should tell this story because it break everybody's heart in this room.
So, someone couldn't make it.
Someone couldn't make it, and a different artist who's much better than I am, named Lee Weeks, was supposed to draw this issue, and he couldn't. He had some health issues and couldn't do it. So they were on a very tight window, and Alex knew that I was a writer and an artist, and I could work quickly if needed. And so they tapped me. It gave me like 6 weeks from beginning to end.
That's a lot of time to draw 20 pages.
It's not a lot of time. Right? It's not a lot of time to pitch an idea, get it approved by Hasbro, and then come back and make a comic book out of it. So it's not a lot of time, and but we did it. And I would say the most arduous portion of it was the pitch process. I probably pitched 6 different story scenarios, and Alex, he understood that I could handle the storytelling part of it, so he really needed to nail down the pitch first. And
6 at once. Or
I did 6 at once. Yeah,
okay.
I sent in like, not huge long pitches, but like a paragraph describing what I wanted to do. And Alex knew what the other people were doing. He's like, oh, you're treading the same ground. Don't do that kind of story. Or we had a story set here. Don't do that. The only thing that was set in stone is I had to use Beachhead. And and we sort of coalesced around this sort of die-hard, reverse the raid sort of idea for Beachhead, because we love the idea of him being like ambushing people and putting his skills to use there, but also his history as a drill instructor. So we wanted him to like sort of teach the kids in the comic how to survive. And so we had and Alex sort of guided me through all those story points, and they all coalesced around the story we did. And I'm really proud of it. I'm really happy with it. And it was a very surreal 6 weeks for me, because at the same time I was working on a silent G.I. Joe issue, I was approached to do, you guys know the A Quiet Place movies? I was approached by the producers of that film to adapt that for comics. But they weren't quite sure it could be a comic book, because, comics have people talking. And Quiet Place are not supposed to be talking. So they gave me the screenplay and they said, turn 4 pages of this into a comic book without any words. So at the same time I was working on Beachhead silent, I was working on A Quiet Place silently. And it was it was a great, I was right in my wheelhouse. I loved it. And I am now still working on Quiet Place comics that'll come out in March. And they're about 50% silent and 50% some dialogue, but it's still that same sort of exercise in pure storytelling. So it was a great time.
In terms of Beachhead, the character was already picked for you. Did you have a favorite character? Did you know this character?
No, I'm going to confess something to you. You maybe get your pitchforks and torches out. I'm an adventure team. You can tell from the gray in my hair. I'm an adventure team guy. So the little G.I. Joe, I don't know. Like, my G.I. Joe's got a beard, he's hanging out with Barbie.
Kung Fu grip.
Yeah, he's got Kung Fu grip. So I had my little brother, however, does know about a real American hero, G.I. Joe. So I saw him around the house, but that wasn't part of my world. So I had to be coached up on G.I. Joe.
But you were aware of the Marvel G.I. Joe comic book.
Yes, because I was a fan of Larry. And so that silent storytelling issue, even though I was not a regular buyer of G.I. Joe, I went and got that one.
Issue 21, Silent Interlude.
Because I'm a fan of Larry and of, people always forget about Steve Lealoa, who did the finished art on that.
Yeah.
And he's a genius. He's probably, in my opinion, he's the best inker, one of the best inkers of the Bronze Age on. And he did a fantastic job finishing Larry's layouts on that book.
And you have your Beachhead issue for sale at your booth.
Yeah, people have been bringing me theirs. You don't have to buy it from me. But I do have the collection at my booth, and I do have the black and white variant. I think it's a 1 in 10 variant. I don't know about collecting. So
that if you buy the issue from Phil, that's on glossy paper. And if you buy the trade paperback that has all 5 of the new silent issues, plus the original issue 21, that's printed on newsprint.
It looks great. It looks great on newsprint.
So 2 different experiences.
It's like it's a real comic now because it's on newsprint.
All right, so a wrap-up question. Ron,
Yes.
You have been working on a project for some time that you can't talk about.
I can't. I just call it the Forever Project.
Okay.
So to see. Yeah.
But you're coming to the end of it after some time.
Forever is ending.
So the standard question I would ask here is there anything you're working on currently or coming out in the future that you would like to hype? Do you want to take a moment to tell us about a song? No. Okay. Well, then I will not ask a question. I will make a statement.
I recorded a song. I'm going to make a video, put it out. So that's.
Wait. We can do one more sentence on this. You play guitar?
Yeah, I write stuff. I've played in bands and all this other kind of stuff.
You are musical.
Yeah.
That's your fallback career from cartoonist to
Yeah,
rock and
I
roll
know.
star?
Dad, I want to
need
be
a
one of
third-
2 things. I'm going
Yeah.
to be a comic book artist or a rock star.
You might need a third fallback.
Yeah. And my dad was a very Midwestern 1950s guy. You're crazy. So.
What's the flavor of your music that
Yeah, it was kind of, I don't know, power poppy, Fountains of Wayne, Elvis Costello-y kind of stuff. So, stuff like that, I guess.
All right, so please follow. Ron, where can people find you on the internet?
Well, I have the Book of Face like everybody else, and Facebooky and Instagram and stuff. I'm just not so good at getting that on there all the time.
Okay,
So,
you do have them.
Oh yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay. And when your song is out there,
I will alert the media.
Okay.
So, yeah.
You'll know about it.
You'll know about it. Everybody will know. So.
I like websites. Remember 2000, 2009?
Yeah.
I like websites.
Good time.
And we'll make a little website for it, and we'll do stuff.
Is your artist website still?
Yeah.
RJWagner.com?
Yes, yeah.
Uh,
So, yes, I have a website. So, yeah.
You know what? I did think of a question. You have storyboarded for animation.
I have. Mm-hmm.
Phil, have you storyboarded for TV, film, animation?
Animation, yeah.
Okay, for animation.
Animation.
Is it that different from comics, since we're talking about storytelling and scripts?
I thought that I shared a studio with this guy by the name of Adam Van Wyck, and Adam has done storyboards for
Great storyboard.
He's phenomenal, but he's worked on the Ice Age movies and a lot of these kind of stuff that you guys are the Incredibles and all sorts of stuff. He's worked on all sorts of stuff, and for a couple of years I did storyboards with him. I was kind of his assistant and helped him out and everything. And I thought, hey, this comic book thing that I do will just transfer right over into the storyboard business. And I couldn't have been more wrong. And I mean, there's drawing ability, there's there's storytelling. You think about shots and stuff, but it's but how it's all broke down, it's all very sort of mechanical. Like you have to if I'm panning from here to here, you have to draw that and have to notate it all. It all has to be and it's like Phil. I'm used to doing stuff that people are gonna see. I drew this comic book and you're going to buy it. You're going to see it. This is what I did. Here it is. Cool. But storyboarding for animation, unless you're watching this cartoon, no one's going to see what you did. Right? I mean, I know it's an ego thing. It's like, oh, here's my stuff. And I drew, and there is that. But for storyboards, and it has to be, you have to draw on model, right? Which means you get a model sheets. Here's the characters. It has to look like them. But you have to do it fast, and you're...
And sometimes you can draw better than the model.
Right.
Staying on model, sometimes you have to degrade your
draft.
Yeah,
and that was the thing, because I'm used to we're going to render this, and we're going to, no, let's go, and I found... Because comics, if you're drawing a 22-page issue or something, 3 or 4 weeks, you're doing a lot of work. But with storyboards, I found, and you're doing cartoon animation, Saturday morning, whatever, it's broken up into 3 acts, pretty much, and you'll get an act, here's your 8 minutes or whatever, right, that you're going to work on. But you still need to cancel all your plans for the next month.
Yeah.
And your wife is not going to see you. Your kids are, because this is what you're going to do. Because there's just a shit ton of drawings you got to do. And and you have to do them fast. It has to be, so you can't be super precious with it. So I learned, you kind of oh, I can get rid of all of this sort of detail. I don't need that. You're simplifying. But and in a comic book, Phil and I are in a panel talking, and there's a couple word balloons, and in your mind, you're you're imagining them talking or moving or whatever they're doing, so you're filling in a lot of stuff, like me. But if I'm doing a, storyboard, I'm going to draw this, and there's a pose and a B pose and a C pose. And
you have to visually spell it out.
You have to visually spell everything out. And you can do, if here's our scene, right? I draw this in the first shot, all of this. But after that, I don't have to draw this again. If nothing's moving, and other than my hands or whatever, and that stuff, you're going to have an A pose and a B pose and C, and you have to notate it all out. And you have to, so it's a lot.
What cartoon did you?
We worked on
storyboard for?
Legion and some Batman and some Scooby Doo, and we did a bunch of stuff. So yeah.
Phil, what animation did you storyboard for, and can you talk about the differences?
I'd say Ron got it all mostly. But when we do comic books, part of our sixth sense as cartoonists is knowing how much we can let happen between the panels, knowing how much we can let happen in the gutters off screen, but still have you follow the story. So we know what to omit. And there's no omission in storyboarding. You've got to detail everything, like Ron said. So, like, when we have, like, in a comic book, we might have a motion line, showing movement. In a storyboard, we've got to break the movement down. So, but as visual storytellers, we have a leg up on a lot of people in terms of storyboarding.
Yeah.
But I boarded on Batman the Animated Series and the Superman show that was out around the same time. And then Big Guy and Rusty the Boy Robot, if anyone remembers that, and Men in Black. And then I ran screaming back to comics.
That's so. Yeah.
That's interesting because I've heard a few people, just a few, say comics are really hard and animation pays better. Mm-hmm. And this.
Now, I wouldn't say it was harder. I would say it wasn't as fun.
Wasn't as fun.
Yeah.
And there's not that payoff of you seeing this thing that I created.
You see your name go by like...
Yeah, if you're catching the end. And that's usually after the thing has gotten small.
Yeah.
And then we're coming up, and there I am. And unless you're sitting and watching this cartoon, and like, I worked on this 8 minutes. Like that's, they don't see your...
And I will say, no one's ever brought a Batman DVD up to me to sign.
Right. Right, exactly.
If any of you are local, drive home. Phil will be at his table all day. You can make this dream.
It'll be a first. A Men in Black one would really be a first.
Phil, what are you working on now that you can tell us about, and can you tell us where to find you on the internet?
I'm mostly on Blue Sky. Occasionally, I will drop in with big announcements on Twitter, and I have a fan page on Facebook that I'm not on Facebook, but I have a buddy who runs it for me, so you can there'll be news there, and you can get a hold of me there. I'm working on the aforementioned A Quiet Place comic book that I'm writing and laying out, and it's being drawn by Ryan Kelly, and that'll be finished art by Ryan Kelly, and that'll be out in March from IDW. It's called A Quiet Place Storm Warning, and it takes place in Iowa.
Cool.
And that's a mini-series.
It is a 5-issue mini-series, and it is the first. We had to convince Paramount and John Krasinski that it could be a comic, and so I'm really proud of that. And then I'm working on a series. Next week I'll have an issue of New Gods that I helped out on, and
because the current New Gods series, there's a series
prelude
artist
to each issue,
and each artist has a few pages. Each issue has a few pages at the beginning by a guest artist.
Right, and I'm doing that, and then I have a new series coming out from a new publisher called Ignition Press later in 2026. So I think that's it. I've forgotten something, I'm sure.
Is the one from Ignition, are you writing?
I'm writing and drawing it.
And drawing.
Yeah.
Writing and penciling.
Yeah, penciling. I don't like inking.
Ask Phil at his table all about why he doesn't like inking. Bring your cool things to get signed, buy prints and sketches from these two fine artists, writer-artists. Thank you, everyone. Again, my name's Tim Finn, and enjoy the rest of the show.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks.
And that's a wrap on the silent interview panel at Assembly Required 2025. Find more Talking Joe at talkingjoe.co.uk, our website with links to all of our podcast platforms, and find us on Facebook at Talking Joe Comics, where Mark posts news and poses questions, and where I lurk and occasionally chime in. We're on Twitter and Instagram. If you're listening on a podcast platform, why not leave us a review and a 5-star rating? If you're watching us on YouTube, hit like and hit subscribe. We're also on Patreon, patreon.com/talkingjoe. So a big thanks to all of our backers, Richard, Sam, Bill, Rob, Shane, Simon, Chris, Joe, Craig, Frank, Mike, D, Shane version 2. This one uses both a smartphone and a Zoom H1 to record audio. Infinite Entertainment, Patrick, Gary V, and Coldroff, who get early access to episodes and a warm glow in their translucent plastic torsos, which have some red plastic inside. Stay tuned for episodes in which we alternate between the Energon Universe, G.I. Joe,
the A Real American Hero G.I. Joe, and occasional looks back to the aughts as we finish our read-through of the Devil's Due era of G.I. Joe. Plus, you never know when Mark will connect with a smart writer, artist, or editor and nab a cool interview with someone who worked on these comic books. Find me at youtube.com/@AtomicAbe, my brick-and-mortar comic book store outside of Boston, Hub Comics, and my blog where I write about G.I. Joe and G.I. Joe conventions, realamericanbook.com. That's it for us, or just me, done for this week. But remember that Nobody Beats Talking Joe, an international podcast! Later.
Thank you, Tim.
Thank you, Ron.
It was good. Good answer. Good question.
Thanks.
You know, a lot of panels are like, tell us what you do. Yeah, start talking.
Don't stop.
I thought you guys would go meta and just sit there in silence the whole time.
I did that joke twice yesterday, and then I forgot to do it this morning at the start of the panel. Like, we're just going to pantomime.
The audio version would have been fantastic.
You'd hear very slight changes in air pressure.
Right. A whooshing.
Like when, someone walks in and sits down, two people walk out, everyone walks out.
Right.